The dust-choked horizon offered no promise of relief as Rose Northcott staggered down the rutted trail toward Buffalo, Wyoming Territory, 1876. Her once fine traveling dress hung in tatters from her frame, her last possession aside from the locket containing her parents' miniatures. 3 weeks since the stagecoach robbery that had left her penniless, 3 weeks of desperate travel, and now hunger clawed at her insides as fiercely as fear gripped her heart. The town ahead represented her final hope and perhaps her final destination. The frontier settlement sprawled before her, a collection of wooden structures lining a wide, dusty main street. Men in work clothes and wide-brimmed hats moved between the buildings with purpose. Women were fewer, their long skirts sweeping the dirt as they hurried about their business. Wagons rattled past, drivers calling to oxen or mules, while a group of cowboys led horses toward a corral near the livery stable. Rose paused, gathering her remaining strength. She had come west at her uncle's invitation, only to discover upon arriving in Cheyenne that he had died 2 months before. With no family remaining and her meager funds stolen, her options had dwindled to nothing. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stepped onto Buffalo's Main Street. The first establishment she passed was a saloon called the Lucky Strike. Through its swinging doors came the sounds of a tinny piano and raucous laughter. Rose quickened her pace, keeping her eyes downcast. Her mother's warnings about such establishments echoed in her memory. "You lost, miss." A gruff voice stopped her. Rose looked up to find a man in his 50s regarding her with suspicious eyes. His vest strained over a generous belly, and a star-shaped badge gleamed on his chest. "No, sir," she answered, her voice cracking from thirst. "I'm looking for work." The man, clearly the town marshal or sheriff, looked her up and down, taking in her bedraggled appearance. "Not much call for fancy Eastern ladies around here. I can cook, clean, so I'm a hard worker." The words tumbled out desperately. The man scratched his beard. "Widow?" "No, sir. My parents died in Boston. I was traveling to my uncle in Wyoming, but he passed before I arrived. Robbers took everything else on the way here." Something like pity flickered across his face. "Buffalo ain't a place for unattached women without means. There's the saloon, I suppose, but—" "No," Rose interrupted firmly. "Not that, never that." The sheriff studied her face. "Well, good luck to you then. Name's Sheriff Tanner if you need help." He tipped his hat and continued down the street. Rose felt a flicker of hope at the man's kindness, but it quickly faded as she moved through town. At the general store, the owner needed no help. At the small hotel, the proprietress gave her a cup of water but had no work to offer. The dressmaker already had an assistant. By sunset, Rose's situation had grown desperate. She had been refused at every respectable business in town. Her stomach cramped with hunger, and weakness made her steps falter. She found herself on a bench outside the post office, wondering what to do as darkness fell. "You still here, girl?" Sheriff Tanner appeared, hands on his belt. Rose nodded, too tired to stand. "No luck." "None, sir." The sheriff sighed heavily. "Can't have you sleeping on the street. Too many unsavory characters about. Come along to the jail. There's a clean cell where you can spend the night." Humiliation burned through Rose, but she had no choice. She followed him to a small building with barred windows. Inside, a pot-bellied stove provided warmth and wanted posters lined the walls. "Empty tonight, fortunately," the sheriff said, unlocking a cell. "There's a cot and blanket. Not much, but better than the street." "Thank you," Rose whispered. The sheriff disappeared into a back room, returning with a plate of beans and a hunk of bread. "Eat this. We'll figure something out tomorrow." After he left, Rose ate slowly, savoring each bite. Despite her circumstances, exhaustion soon claimed her, and she fell into a troubled sleep on the narrow cot. Morning brought Sheriff Tanner and another man. Tall and lean, with dark hair and calculating eyes, the stranger wore an expensive suit despite the early hour. "Miss Northcott, this is Vernon Blackwell. Owns most of Buffalo," Sheriff Tanner said. "Heard about your situation." The well-dressed man smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. "A pleasure, Miss Northcott. Such a shame about your circumstances." Rose stood, smoothing her wrinkled dress. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwell. Sheriff Tanner tells me you're seeking employment." Blackwell circled her slowly. "I might have a position for a young woman of your attributes." Rose stiffened. "What sort of position?" "I own the Golden Palace. Finest establishment in 3 territories." He preened slightly. "Always need refined young ladies to entertain my guests." "I won't work in a saloon, sir," Blackwell laughed. "Not just a saloon, my dear, an entertainment venue. Dancing, singing, serving drinks, nothing more required. Initially." "The answer is no." The man's smile vanished. "Pride is a luxury for those with options, Miss Northcott, which you appear to lack entirely." Sheriff Tanner cleared his throat. "Perhaps there's another solution." "Such as?" Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "The sheriff in Sweetwater Creek passed last month. Quinn Lawton took over temporary duties, but he needs household help since his mother died." Tanner scratched his chin. "Respectable position for a lady. Sweetwater's 30 miles from here," Blackwell said dismissively. "It's honest work," Tanner countered. Rose looked between them. "I would be grateful for the opportunity." Blackwell's face darkened. "Unfortunately, there's the matter of your debt to consider." "Debt? I owe you nothing, sir." "The town of Buffalo can't provide charity to every down-on-her-luck traveler," Blackwell said smoothly. "Your night's lodging, the meal provided, the marshal's time, all expenses to our community." Sheriff Tanner frowned. "Now, Vernon, I speak as town council chairman," Blackwell cut him off. "We have ordinances. Vagrants must pay their way or work off their debt." "How much?" Rose asked, dread filling her. $20 should cover it." $20. She had no hope of raising such an amount. It might as well have been 1,000. Blackwell spread his hands. "Or you can work it off at my establishment. 1 month should settle things nicely." Sheriff Tanner's face reddened. "That's robbery, Vernon, and you know it. It's business." Blackwell's eyes hardened. "And the law." Rose felt the walls closing in. 1 month in Blackwell's establishment would destroy any chance at her respectable future. "What about selling her contract to Lawton?" Tanner suggested. "He pays the town debt, gets household help. She gets a respectable position." Blackwell considered this. $50. "For the debt and the trouble." "30, Tanner countered, "and I'll deliver her myself." "You're selling me," Rose whispered, horrified. Tanner looked uncomfortable. "A labor contract, miss. Common practice out here for those without means. Better than the alternative." $40 and you've got a deal," Blackwell said. "I'll wire Lawton. If he agrees, she's his. If not." He let the implication hang. "Done." Tanner nodded grimly. "I'll ready the wagon if he agrees." They left Rose alone with her thoughts. Being sold like property, it was unconscionable. Yet what choice did she have? Work in Blackwell's saloon and sacrifice her reputation and virtue, or accept this contract with an unknown sheriff? Neither option offered dignity, but one at least promised safety. 2 hours later, Sheriff Tanner returned. "Lawton's agreed. We leave at noon." Just like that, he'll purchase a stranger's contract. He needs help, and good women are scarce out here. Tanner avoided her eyes. "Get ready, long journey ahead." Rose had nothing to prepare. Her worldly possessions consisted of the clothes she wore and the locket around her neck. When Sheriff Tanner returned, he brought a bundle of cloth. "My late wife's dress," he explained gruffly. "Can't have you arriving looking like that." The simple brown dress was too large but clean and sturdy. Rose changed in the cell, pinning the extra fabric as best she could. She emerged to find a wagon waiting outside. "Thank you for the dress," she said softly. Tanner nodded. "It's a day and a half to Sweetwater Creek. We'll camp tonight, arrive tomorrow evening." As they left Buffalo behind, Rose fought tears. How had her life come to this? A month ago, she had been a respected teacher's daughter in Boston. Now she was property sold to a stranger in a wilderness town. "Sheriff Lawton, what's he like?" she finally asked. Tanner kept his eyes on the trail. "Young for a sheriff, 30 or so. Took over after his predecessor was shot during a bank robbery. Been temporary for 3 months now." "Is he decent?" The older man glanced at her. "Never heard otherwise. Quiet man. Keeps to himself since his mother passed last spring. She kept house for him. Now it's falling apart around him from what I hear, and he's unmarried, was engaged once. Girl died of fever before the wedding, 5-6 years back now." Tanner clicked to the horses. "Don't worry, miss. If he mistreats you, you wire me. Contract or not, I'll come get you." The kindness behind his gruff words brought tears to Rose's eyes. "Thank you." They traveled through rolling grasslands dotted with sagebrush, the distant mountains a purple smudge on the horizon. By evening, Tanner found a small creek where they made camp. He shared jerky and hardtack, then rolled in his blanket on one side of the fire, leaving Rose the wagon bed. Sleep eluded her as she stared at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow she would meet the man who had purchased her labor. What would he expect? What would her life become? Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, but her dreams were troubled. They arrived in Sweetwater Creek as the sun dipped toward the horizon the following day. It was smaller than Buffalo, one main street with perhaps 24 buildings, surrounded by scattered homesteads. The mountains loomed closer here, and ponderosa pines dotted the landscape. Tanner pulled the wagon to a stop before a small building with a sign declaring it the sheriff's office. A hitching post out front held a magnificent black stallion. "Wait here," Tanner instructed, climbing down. Rose sat rigidly in the wagon, heart pounding. From within the building came the murmur of male voices. Minutes stretched into an eternity before the door opened again. Sheriff Tanner emerged first, followed by the tallest man Rose had ever seen. Sheriff Quinn Lawton stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean frame. His brown hair was cropped short beneath his hat, and a neat beard framed a solemn face. He wore a simple white shirt, dark trousers, and a star pinned to his vest. A gun belt hung low on his hips. His eyes, when they met Rose's, were a startling blue and utterly unreadable. "Miss Northcott," Sheriff Tanner said, "this is Sheriff Quinn Lawton." Lawton approached the wagon, his movements deliberate. Up close, Rose could see the fine lines around his eyes, not from laughter, she suspected, but from squinting into the distance. "Miss Northcott." His voice was deep with a slight rasp. He removed his hat, revealing hair that curled slightly. "Welcome to Sweetwater Creek." Rose forced herself to meet his gaze. "Sheriff Lawton, I understand we have an arrangement." His expression remained neutral. $40 for 6 months' service as my housekeeper." 6 months. Rose glanced at Sheriff Tanner, who avoided her eyes. Blackwell had said 1 month to clear her debt. Another lie. She began, then swallowed hard. What choice did she have? "Yes, sir," Lawton nodded once. "Your quarters are prepared. We'll discuss duties tomorrow." He turned to Tanner. "Papers." Tanner handed over a document which Lawton signed. Money changed hands, $40 that bought Rose's freedom for half a year. "I'll be on my way then," Tanner said, pocketing the cash. He tipped his hat to Rose. "Remember what I said, miss. Any trouble, you let me know." As Tanner's wagon disappeared down the street, Rose stood beside her meager bundle, feeling utterly alone. "This way," Lawton said, gesturing toward the end of the street. He picked up her bundle before she could protest. They walked in silence past the general store, saloon, and blacksmith shop. Townsfolk nodded respectfully to Lawton, while casting curious glances at Rose. Finally, they reached a modest two-story house set apart from the others, with a small garden gone wild with weeds. Lawton opened the front door, allowing Rose to enter first. Inside, the home was clean but Spartan. A sitting room held a worn sofa and two chairs flanking a stone fireplace. Beyond was a kitchen with a large table. A staircase led to the second floor. "Kitchen parlor," Lawton said briefly. "My office is through there." He nodded toward a closed door. "Upstairs are 3 bedrooms. Mine is at the front. Yours is at the back, beside the linen closet." He led her upstairs, opened the door to a small but neat bedroom containing a narrow bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. A window overlooked the garden and the mountains beyond. "Bathrooms downstairs off the kitchen," he continued. "Water pump in the yard. Wood for the stove is stacked on the porch." Rose stood in the center of the room, uncertain. This man had purchased her contract, essentially purchased her, yet he seemed almost uncomfortable with her presence. "Thank you," she said softly. Lawton set her bundle on the bed. "There's stew on the stove. I've eaten. Help yourself." He paused at the door. "One thing, Miss Northcott." "Yes. Lock your door tonight." Before she could question this strange instruction, he was gone, his footsteps retreating down the stairs. Rose sank onto the bed, trembling. What had she gotten herself into? After gathering her courage, Rose ventured downstairs. The kitchen was large but sparsely furnished, with a cast iron stove, a pump sink, and a sturdy table with 4 chairs. True to Lawton's word, a pot of stew simmered on the stove. She found a bowl in a cupboard and served herself, suddenly ravenous. The stew was surprisingly good beef, potatoes, and carrots in a rich broth. She had just finished when she heard a noise at the back door. Rose froze, remembering Lawton's warning to lock her door. The door swung open and a young man stepped inside. Tall and lanky, with sandy hair and an easy smile, he seemed surprised to see her. "Well now," he said, removing his hat, "you must be the new housekeeper." Rose stood, alarmed at this intrusion. "Who are you?" "Jasper Reed, madam, deputy sheriff." He gestured to a badge similar to Lawton's. "I board here. Quinn didn't tell you." "No, he didn't mention Jasper." Lawton appeared in the doorway to his office. "I see you've met Miss Northcott. Just now." The deputy grinned. "Didn't know she was arriving today. Miss Northcott will be taking care of the household." "She has the back bedroom." Jasper nodded. "Pleasure to meet you, madam. Been eating my own cooking too long. Nearly poisoned myself last week." Despite her anxiety, Rose found herself smiling at his friendly manner. "I'll try not to continue the trend." Lawton cleared his throat. "Jasper, anything to report?" "All quiet. Patterson's boy found his lost calf. Old man Weber paid his taxes. May Howard's expecting again." "Good, get some rest. You've got early patrol." Lawton turned to Rose. "I'll be in my office. Don't wait up." As he disappeared back into his office, Rose looked questioningly at Jasper. The young deputy shrugged apologetically. "He's not much for conversation. Been worse since his ma passed." He helped himself to stew. "Don't take it personal. He's a good man. Best I've worked with." "How long have you been deputy?" 2 years now. Quinn trained me himself, strict but fair." Jasper sat at the table. "Where you from, Miss Northcott?" "Boston, originally." Jasper whistled. "Long way from home. What brings you out here?" Rose hesitated, unwilling to share her humiliating circumstances. "I needed work." Something in her tone must have discouraged further questions, for Jasper simply nodded and focused on his meal. When he finished, He thanked her and headed upstairs, leaving Rose alone in the kitchen. She washed the dishes, wondering about the strange household she'd entered. A sheriff who barely spoke and a friendly deputy who boarded with him. And now her, bound by contract to serve for 6 months. After tidying the kitchen, Rose climbed the stairs to her room. True to Lawton's advice, she locked the door before undressing and washing at the basin. The bed, though narrow, proved comfortable, and despite her troubling circumstances, exhaustion soon claimed her. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, disorientation gripped her, the unfamiliar room, the distant sound of voices. Then memory returned, and with it, the knowledge of her situation. Rose dressed quickly in her borrowed dress and made her way downstairs. In the kitchen, she found Jasper frying bacon while Lawton sat at the table examining papers. "Morning, Miss Northcott," Jasper called cheerfully. "Hope you slept well. Coffee's hot." Lawton looked up, nodded once in greeting, then returned to his papers. "Good morning," Rose replied, moving toward the stove. "Let me take over." "Happy to surrender," Jasper said, handing her the spatula. "I burn more than I cook." As Rose took charge of breakfast, adding eggs to the pan, Lawton spoke without looking up. "Miss Northcott, after breakfast I'll show you the household. Jasper, the Simmons brothers are arguing over water rights again. See if you can settle it before someone gets shot." "Yes, sir." Jasper poured himself more coffee. "Miss Northcott, there's flour and such in the pantry. Been living on bacon and beans too long." After a quick breakfast during which Lawton remained silent while Jasper chatted amiably, the deputy departed. Rose cleared the dishes, aware of Lawton watching her. "Leave those," he said finally. "I'll show you the house." The tour was brief and businesslike. The downstairs included the kitchen, parlor, Lawton's office, and a small bathroom with a tin tub. Upstairs were the 3 bedrooms and a linen closet. "Laundry day is Monday," Lawton explained. "Clothesline in the back garden. Market day Tuesday. I'll provide a list and funds. Meals at 7, noon, and 6. I often miss the midday meal due to duties." Rose followed him, noting the sparse furnishings and the absence of personal items. No photographs, no mementos, nothing to suggest a life beyond the badge. "Your mother lived here with you?" She ventured. A shadow crossed his face. "Yes, for many years." "I'm sorry for your loss." He nodded stiffly. "Any questions about your duties? When is my day off?" "Sunday afternoons after dinner." He hesitated. "There's a church if you're inclined." "Thank you, I am." Lawton reached into his pocket and withdrew a key. "For your room. As I said, keep it locked at night." Rose accepted the key. "Is there danger I should know about?" His expression remained unreadable. "Sweetwater Creek is generally peaceful, but we get drifters, troublemakers. A woman alone should take precautions." "I see. One more thing." He reached into his pocket again and produced a small coin purse. "An advance, $5, for personal items you might need." Rose stared at the purse. "Thank you, but it's not charity," he interrupted. "It's subtracted from your earnings once your debt is cleared." She took the purse, trying to hide her surprise at his consideration. "When will my debt be cleared exactly?" "The contract is for 6 months. After that, you'll earn $5 weekly, plus room and board should you choose to stay." He turned toward the stairs. "I have rounds. The pantry needs inventory. We'll discuss menus at dinner." With that, he was gone, leaving Rose to ponder this strange, taciturn man who had purchased her contract, yet treated her with detached respect. The next few days established a routine. Rose rose early to prepare breakfast for Lawton and Jasper, then tackled the neglected house. Years of bachelor living had left their mark: dusty corners, sparse furnishings, a kitchen lacking basic supplies. She found solace in creating order from chaos, scrubbing floors, washing windows, organizing cupboards. Lawton remained a mystery. He spoke little, ate quickly, and spent most of his time either in his office or on patrol. He answered her direct questions with minimal words, offered no personal information, and maintained a careful distance. Jasper, by contrast, was friendly and talkative. From him, she learned fragments about her employer. Quinn was a Texas Ranger before coming here, Jasper told her as they sat on the porch one evening. Lawton had been called to a disturbance at the saloon. Earned quite a reputation. They still tell stories. What kind of stories? Rose asked, mending one of Jasper's shirts. Tracked a gang of cattle rustlers across 300 miles of badlands. Caught them all single-handed. Jasper grinned. They say he can shoot the eye out of a jackrabbit at 500 yards. Rose smiled. That sounds exaggerated. Maybe. But I've seen him drop 2 armed men before either could clear leather. Jasper's expression grew serious. He's not just fast, he's smart, reads people, knows when trouble's brewing before it starts. He doesn't seem to read me, Rose murmured. Barely looks at me, Jasper chuckled. That's different. Quinn doesn't know how to talk to ladies. His ma did all the socializing since she passed. He shrugged. The house has been mighty quiet. On her first Sunday, Rose attended the small church at the edge of town. Pastor Miller welcomed her warmly, as did most of the congregation, though she noted curious glances and whispered comments. Clearly, her arrival as Sheriff Lawton's housekeeper had sparked interest. After the service, several women introduced themselves. May Howard, visibly pregnant with her 4th child, invited Rose to join the Ladies' Aid Society. Martha Wilson, the blacksmith's wife, offered vegetables from her garden. Only Vera Peterson, a pinched-faced woman in her 40s, seemed unwelcoming. "So you're living at the sheriff's house," Vera remarked, her tone suggesting impropriety. "Just you and 2 unmarried men. How modern." "I'm employed as housekeeper," Rose replied evenly. "It's a professional arrangement." "Of course it is," Vera smiled thinly. Though some might wonder why Sheriff Lawton would bring a strange woman into his home rather than marry a local girl. Maggie Thornton has had her eye on him for years. May Howard intervened. "Pay no mind to gossip, Miss Northcott. Sheriff Lawton's reputation is above reproach, and we're all glad he has proper help at last." As Rose walked home, she pondered Vera's insinuations. She had been so focused on her own circumstances that she hadn't considered how her presence might appear to others. Would her reputation suffer even in this respectable position? She found Lawton sitting on the porch, cleaning his revolver. He nodded as she approached. "Church was pleasant," she offered. "Pastor Miller is a good man," he replied, reassembling the weapon with practiced ease. "I met several townspeople." Rose hesitated. "Sheriff, may I ask something?" He looked up, those startling blue eyes meeting hers. "Go ahead." "Will my presence here damage your standing in town?" "There seems to be talk." Lawton's expression darkened. "Vera Peterson." Rose nodded, surprised at his perception. "Vera wanted her niece to keep house for me. I declined." He holstered his weapon. "Don't concern yourself with gossip. This arrangement is proper. Jasper's presence ensures propriety." "I see." She smoothed her skirt. "Thank you for clarifying." As she turned to enter the house, his voice stopped her. "Miss Northcott." "Yes, your reputation is safe here. You have my word." The sincerity in his voice warmed something inside her. "Thank you, Sheriff." That evening, as Rose prepared dinner, the sound of hoofbeats approached. Through the window, she saw a rider dismount a woman in a fine riding habit. She watched as the woman tied her horse and approached the front door with confident strides. Moments later, Rose heard Lawton greeting the visitor. A woman's cultured voice responded, too low to make out the words. Rose continued chopping vegetables, trying not to eavesdrop, but curiosity nagged at her. The parlor door opened, and Lawton appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Miss Northcott, tea for two, please." "Of course, Sheriff." As Rose prepared the tea tray, she couldn't help wondering about the visitor. Was this Maggie Thornton that Vera had mentioned? When she entered the parlor with the tea service, she found Lawton standing by the fireplace while an elegantly dressed woman occupied the sofa. Perhaps 30, with golden hair arranged in a fashionable style, she exuded confidence and breeding. "Ah, thank you," the woman said, assessing Rose with sharp green eyes. "You must be the new housekeeper Quinn mentioned." "Yes, madam, Rose Northcott, Margaret Thornton." She accepted a cup from Rose. "My father owns the bank. Quinn and I are old friends." Rose noted the familiar use of the sheriff's first name and the proprietary tone. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Thornton. How are you finding Sweetwater Creek? Quite a change from civilization, I imagine." "It's a lovely town," Rose replied diplomatically. Lawton cleared his throat. "That will be all, Miss Northcott. Thank you." Dismissed, Rose returned to the kitchen, aware of Maggie Thornton's critical gaze following her. Later, after their guest had departed, Rose served dinner to Lawton and Jasper in unusual silence. Finally, Jasper broke it. "Maggie Thornton still setting her cap for you, Quinn." Lawton's expression remained impassive. "Bank business." "Bank business in her riding outfit on Sunday afternoon." Jasper grinned. "Must be urgent enough, Jasper." The deputy winked at Rose. "Miss Thornton's been after Quinn for years. Thinks being sheriff's wife would suit her just fine." "My personal life isn't dinner conversation," Lawton said firmly. "What personal life?" Jasper laughed. "You work, you sleep, you clean your guns. That's not living, Quinn." Rose kept her eyes on her plate, feeling uncomfortable witnessing this exchange. Lawton's private affairs were none of her concern, yet she found herself curious. Why hadn't he married Margaret Thornton, who was clearly interested and from a prominent family? The answer came unexpectedly the following morning. Rose was dusting in the parlor when she noticed a small drawer in the writing desk was ajar. As she closed it, a photograph slipped out, a portrait of a young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. "That's Catherine." Rose startled at Lawton's voice. He stood in the doorway watching her. She quickly replaced the photograph. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." "It's all right." He crossed the room and took the photograph, looking at it with an expression of old pain. "She was my fiancée 6 years ago." Sheriff Tanner mentioned. "She passed away," Lawton nodded. "Influenza, 3 weeks before our wedding." He returned the photograph to the drawer. "Sometimes I still forget she's gone." The raw honesty in his voice touched Rose deeply. "I'm very sorry. Life continues." He straightened, his mask of reserve slipping back into place. "I have rounds." As he left, Rose realized she'd glimpsed something few people probably saw: the wounded heart behind Sheriff Lawton's stoic exterior. The weeks passed, and summer deepened across the Wyoming Territory. Rose settled into her role, transforming the neglected house into a home. She planted vegetables in the overgrown garden, baked bread twice weekly, and added small touches: wildflowers on the table, curtains she sewed from fabric purchased with her advance. Gradually, Lawton's rigid formality softened. He began lingering at breakfast, occasionally sharing details about town matters. He approved her household improvements with brief nods, and once, when she served a particularly successful apple pie, she caught the ghost of a smile on his lips. One evening in late August, Rose was in the garden harvesting tomatoes when a commotion erupted in town. Shouts and running footsteps preceded the crack of gunfire. She dropped her basket, heart pounding, and ran toward the house. Jasper burst through the back door, buckling on his gun belt. "Bank robbery," "Stay inside and lock the doors." Before Rose could respond, he was gone, racing toward the sound of more gunshots. She hurried inside, securing doors and windows as instructed, then paced nervously in the kitchen. Where was Lawton? Was he already at the scene? An hour of anxious waiting passed before she heard approaching footsteps on the porch. A key turned in the lock and Lawton entered, supporting a limping Jasper. "Sheriff, Deputy Raid," Rose hurried forward. "What happened?" "3 men robbed the bank," Lawton explained, helping Jasper to a chair. "Got away with over $2,000, Jasper grimaced, clutching his thigh. "Sorry, Quinn, bastard got a lucky shot." "Let me see," Rose said, kneeling beside the wounded deputy. Blood soaked his trousers where a bullet had grazed his leg. "Fetch hot water and bandages," Lawton instructed. "Dr. Evans is delivering a baby at the Palmer farm." Rose hurried to comply, returning with a basin, clean cloths, and the bottle of whiskey she'd found in the pantry. Lawton had already cut away Jasper's trouser leg, revealing an angry furrow across his thigh. "Not too deep," Lawton assessed. "You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky," Jasper muttered. Rose poured whiskey over the wound, causing Jasper to curse colorfully. She cleaned the injury with steady hands, then wrapped it in bandages. "You've done this before," Lawton observed. "My father was a doctor," Rose explained. "I assisted him occasionally." Once Jasper was settled with a stiff drink, Lawton outlined what had happened. 3 masked men had entered the bank just before closing, taking the money and shooting the guard in the shoulder. In the ensuing chase, Jasper had been wounded and the robbers had escaped toward the mountains. "I'll organize a posse at first light," Lawton said, pouring himself a drink. "They won't get far." "I'm riding with you," Jasper insisted. "You're staying put," Lawton countered. "That leg needs rest." "Quinn, that's final, Deputy." After helping Jasper upstairs to his room, Rose returned to find Lawton sitting at the kitchen table, studying a map by lamplight. "Can I get you anything, Sheriff?" He looked up, his face lined with fatigue. "No, thank you for tending to Jasper." "Of course." She hesitated. "Will you be safe pursuing these men alone?" Something flickered in his eyes, surprise at her concern, perhaps. "I won't be alone. Several men have volunteered, still 3 armed robbers. I've faced worse odds." He folded the map. "This is my job, Miss Northcott. I know. I just—" She stopped, unsure why she felt such worry. "Please be careful." Lawton studied her face for a long moment. "I will." The posse departed before dawn. For the next 3 days, Rose tended to Jasper's wound, cooked meals no one was there to eat, and tried to distract herself from constant worry. Why should she care so much about a man who had essentially purchased her? Yet she did care more than she wanted to admit. On the 3rd evening, as dusk settled over Sweetwater Creek, Rose heard riders approaching. She hurried to the window, heart pounding. 5 men on horseback with Lawton in the lead. She rushed to the door as they dismounted. Lawton looked exhausted, dust coating his clothes, a dark stubble shadowing his jaw. "Sheriff," she called. "Are you all right?" He nodded, handing his reins to another rider. "We caught them. Money's recovered." Relief washed over her. "Thank God. Are you hurt?" "Just tired." He trudged up the steps. "How's Jasper?" "Much better. Fever broke yesterday. He's been complaining about being confined to bed." A faint smile touched Lawton's lips. "Good sign." Rose hurried to prepare a hot bath while Lawton reported to Jasper. When he came downstairs, she had the tub filled in the bathroom, a fresh set of clothes laid out, and a meal warming on the stove. "Thank you," he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. After he bathed and changed, Rose served him dinner. Unusually, he asked her to join him at the table. "Tell me what happened," she said as she sat across from him. "Track them to an abandoned mine in the foothills." He cut into the roast beef she'd prepared. "They didn't surrender easily. Were you in danger? He shrugged. Had to flush them out with dynamite. One tried to ambush me. Frank Miller took a bullet in the arm. Rose paled at his matter-of-fact recounting of such peril. You make it sound routine. Part of the job. He looked at her curiously. You were worried. It wasn't a question, but Rose answered anyway. Yes, I was. Why? The directness of his question caught her off guard. Because I care what happens to you, Sheriff. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a hint of vulnerability. Quinn, he said quietly. When we're alone, you could call me Quinn. The intimacy of the moment, of his invitation to use his given name, sent warmth spreading through Rose's chest. Quinn, then. They finished the meal in comfortable silence, something having changed between them. A door opened, if only slightly. The following Sunday, Rose returned from church to find Lawton Quinn sitting on the porch, reading a book. He stood as she approached. Good sermon? He asked. Yes, though Pastor Miller speaks at great length, she smiled. You should join us sometime. Perhaps. He seemed unusually hesitant. I was wondering if you'd care to walk with me this afternoon. It's your free time, but there's a place I'd like to show you. Surprised by the invitation, Rose nodded. I'd like that. After changing from her church dress to a simpler one and refreshing her hair, Rose joined Quinn for their walk. He led her away from town, along a path that wound through stands of aspen trees toward a small stream. I come here sometimes to think, he explained as they reached a clearing beside the water. It's peaceful. It's beautiful, Rose agreed, watching sunlight dance on the rippling stream. Wildflowers dotted the grassy bank, and the aspen's leaves shimmered in the gentle breeze. They sat on a fallen log, listening to the water and the occasional call of birds. Quinn seemed more relaxed away from town, from his duties. May I ask you something personal? Rose ventured. You may ask, he replied with a hint of humor. I might not answer. How did you become a sheriff? Jasper mentioned you were a Texas Ranger. Quinn nodded. For 6 years, after Catherine died, I needed distance. A change. I drifted north, took work as a deputy in Colorado. When the position opened here, I applied. Do you like it? Being sheriff, he considered the question. I'm good at it, not sure like is the right word. He looked at her. What about you? Teaching suits you better than housekeeping, I'd wager. Rose was startled. How did you know I taught? The way you arrange books, your handwriting, how you correct Jasper's grammar without realizing it. His eyes crinkled slightly. I'm trained to observe. Yes, I taught at a girls' school in Boston, she sighed. I miss it sometimes. Why did you come west? Rose hesitated, then decided on honesty. My parents died within months of each other, father of heart failure, mother of grief, I think. I had nowhere to go except to my uncle in Cheyenne, who had already passed, Quinn filled in, demonstrating he'd been paying attention to her story. Yes. I was robbed on the journey, left with nothing. The memory of her desperation still stung. You know the rest. I received a wire from Sheriff Tanner, Quinn said carefully. He mentioned your situation, that a man named Blackwell had attempted to force you into his saloon. Rose looked away, humiliated. I had no choice but to accept the contract. There's something you should know. Quinn's voice grew serious. When your 6 months are up, you'll be free to go. The debt will be considered paid. I won't hold you to anything beyond that. His words stirred conflicting emotions in Rose. Relief at the confirmation of her eventual freedom, yet an unexpected pang at the thought of leaving. Thank you for telling me. You don't belong in someone else's service, he said quietly. You're educated, capable. Perhaps the school here could use a teacher. The kindness of his suggestion, his recognition of her true calling, touched Rose deeply. You would help me with that, if it's what you want. His gaze was steady, sincere. In that moment, Rose realized how much her perception of Quinn Lawton had changed. From the intimidating sheriff who had purchased her contract to this thoughtful man who saw her true worth. "Thank you," she whispered. Their walk back to town was companionable, a new understanding between them. Rose found herself stealing glances at Quinn's profile, noting the strong line of his jaw, the hint of softness around his mouth when he relaxed. That night, as she prepared for bed, Rose confronted a troubling realization. She was developing feelings for Quinn Lawton, feelings that complicated her situation enormously. He was, technically, her employer, her owner by contract. Any attachment between them would be inappropriate, possibly seen as coerced. Yet she couldn't deny the warmth that filled her when he spoke her name, or the admiration she felt for his quiet strength and integrity. It was foolish, dangerous even. In less than 4 months, she would be free to leave Sweetwater Creek. She should focus on that, not on impossible feelings for the sheriff. September brought cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color to the mountains. Rose continued her duties, trying to maintain a proper distance from Quinn despite their growing ease with each other. He, too, seemed aware of the need for boundaries, though Rose occasionally caught him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. One morning, a stranger arrived at the sheriff's office, a well-dressed man with a city accent who introduced himself as Harold Beaumont, attorney at law. "I'm seeking information about a Miss Rose Northcott," he explained when Quinn brought him to the house. "I understand she resides here." Rose emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Rose Northcott, Miss Northcott," the lawyer smiled. "Excellent. I've been searching for you for some time." Quinn's posture stiffened protectively. "What's your business with Miss Northcott?" "I represent the estate of the late Edward Northcott of Boston, Massachusetts." He turned to Rose. "Your father, I believe." Rose nodded, confused. "Yes, but his affairs were settled over a year ago. There was nothing left after his debts were paid." "That's not entirely accurate." Beaumont opened his briefcase, withdrawing several documents. "Your father held shares in a mining venture that was considered worthless at the time of his death. The mine has recently produced a significant silver strike." Rose stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Miss Northcott, that as your father's sole heir, you are entitled to a rather substantial sum, approximately $20,000. The room seemed to spin around her. "20,000. Indeed, I've been tracking you since the executor sent notice to your Boston address." "It's fortunate Sheriff Lawton here replied to my inquiry." Rose glanced at Quinn, who watched her with an unreadable expression. "You knew about this?" "I received Mr. Beaumont's wire 3 days ago," he confirmed. "Asked him to come in person to verify his credentials." The lawyer continued, explaining the paperwork Rose would need to sign, the bank draft that would be issued. She listened in a daze, unable to fully comprehend this sudden reversal of fortune. When Beaumont finally departed, promising to return the following day with the final documents, Rose sank into a chair. $20,000, she whispered. "I can hardly believe it." Quinn remained standing, his expression carefully neutral. "You can return to Boston now. Resume your life there." The thought should have filled her with joy, freedom, independence, a return to civilization. Instead, Rose felt a strange hollowness at the prospect of leaving Sweetwater Creek, leaving Quinn. "Yes," she said softly, "I suppose I can." "Your contract will be nullified, of course." Quinn moved toward his office. "You're free to make whatever plans you wish." As he closed the door behind him, Rose felt tears prick her eyes. His detached tone hurt more than it should have. Did he care so little whether she stayed or went? That evening, Quinn was absent for dinner, sending word through Jasper that he was dealing with a dispute at the mining camp. Jasper, fully recovered from his wound, was enthusiastic about Rose's good fortune. $20,000, he exclaimed. You're rich, Miss Rose. You'll be the talk of Boston society again. Perhaps, she said, pushing food around her plate. Jasper studied her face. You don't seem very excited, it's just unexpected. Quinn's taking it hard, Jasper observed shrewdly. Been like a thundercloud since that lawyer left. Rose looked up sharply. What do you mean? Come on, Miss Rose. You must know he's sweet on you. Jasper grinned at her surprise. Man hasn't looked twice at a woman since Catherine died, then you show up and suddenly he's fixing the porch swing and wearing his good shirt to dinner. That's ridiculous, Rose protested weakly. He purchased my contract. It would be inappropriate for him to. Quinn didn't buy your contract because he needed a housekeeper, Jasper interrupted. He did it because Tanner's wire said you were in trouble, and Quinn can't turn away from someone in trouble. That's who he is. Rose sat silent, absorbing this revelation. Course, now you're wealthy, Jasper continued, and Quinn's just a small-town sheriff with a drafty house. He figures you'll be on the first stage east. That's not fair, Rose objected. He doesn't know what I want. Do you know what you want, Miss Rose? The question lingered in her mind long after Jasper had retired for the evening. What did she want? Boston represented security, civilization, opportunity. Yet something had changed inside her during these months in Wyoming. She had found strength she never knew she possessed, made genuine connections with people like May Howard and Pastor Miller. And then there was Quinn. Steady, honorable Quinn, who had given her safety when she needed it most. Who saw her as more than a housekeeper, who recognized her true abilities, who made her heart race with a single look. Could she leave him behind without ever knowing what might have been between them? Rose was still pondering this question the next morning when Beaumont returned with the final papers. Quinn witnessed her signature, his face impassive as the lawyer handed over a bank draft for the incredible sum. Congratulations, Miss Northcott, Beaumont said, shaking her hand. You're a wealthy woman now. After the lawyer departed, Quinn handed Rose a folded document. Your labor contract. It's nullified as promised. Rose accepted the paper, their fingers brushing briefly. Thank you. The stage to Cheyenne leaves tomorrow morning, Quinn said, his voice carefully controlled. From there you can catch the train east. I haven't decided to leave yet, Rose replied quietly. A flicker of something hope perhaps crossed his face before disappearing. You should consider your options carefully. I intend to. She met his gaze steadily. Would it matter to you, Quinn, if I stayed? The directness of her question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment his careful mask slipped, revealing naked longing in his eyes. Then he looked away. Your life is yours to choose now, Rose, as it should be. Before she could press further, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and the sound of running feet drew them to the window. Jasper burst through the door, face flushed with excitement. Quinn. Just got word the Blackwell gang was spotted heading this way. Blackwell, Rose repeated, a chill running through her. Quinn was already reaching for his gun belt. Vernon Blackwell, his brother Lucas, Jasper explained, runs with a nasty bunch. They hit a stage near Laramie, killed the driver. How many? Quinn demanded, checking his revolver. 5, according to the Telegraph. They're armed and dangerous. Quinn turned to Rose. Stay inside, lock the doors. But promise me, Rose. His eyes burned into hers. Promise you'll stay safe. I promise. With a curt nod, he followed Jasper outside, leaving Rose alone with her fear not just for herself but for Quinn. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. Rose paced the house, startling at every sound. From her upstairs window, she could see townspeople hurrying home, storefronts closing, armed men taking positions. The usual bustle of Sweetwater Creek had given way to tense waiting. As dusk approached, the first gunshots shattered the silence. Rose ran to the window. 5 riders thundered into town, firing indiscriminately. Quinn and several deputies emerged from buildings, returning fire. One of the outlaws fell from his saddle. The others scattered, taking cover behind water troughs and wagons. The gunfight intensified. Rose watched in horror as bullets splintered wood and shattered glass. A townsman crumpled to the ground. Jasper darted between buildings, trying to flank the attackers. Then she saw him, a man creeping along the side of the mercantile, working his way toward Quinn's position. From her vantage point, Rose could see what Quinn couldn't. He was about to be ambushed. Without thinking, Rose grabbed the rifle Quinn kept above the door and raced downstairs. She knew how to shoot. Her father had taught her during summers at their country house. But knowing and doing were very different things. She pushed open the back door, heart pounding. The would-be ambusher was now at the corner of the building, raising his weapon toward Quinn's unprotected back. Rose lifted the rifle, took aim, and fired. The bullet went wide, but the noise was enough to alert Quinn. He spun just as the outlaw fired, diving for cover. The distraction gave Quinn the split second he needed to return fire. The outlaw fell. In the chaos that followed, the remaining gang members attempted to flee. 2 were shot down in the street. Another surrendered. The last, a man Rose recognized with a jolt as Vernon Blackwell himself made a desperate dash for freedom. Quinn pursued him on foot, catching him at the edge of town. Rose watched from a distance as the 2 men struggled. A gunshot echoed, then silence. For an eternal moment, Rose stood frozen, unable to breathe. Then Quinn rose to his feet, hauling Blackwell's limp form upright. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by guilt. She had disobeyed Quinn's direct instruction to stay inside. She had involved herself in a dangerous situation. As the townspeople emerged, attending to the wounded and securing the prisoners, Rose retreated to the house, unsure of her reception. She was in the kitchen, hands trembling as she prepared coffee for the inevitable wounded, when the door opened. Quinn stood there, his face streaked with dirt and gunpowder, a bloody graze across his temple. "You're hurt," she whispered. "You fired that shot." "It wasn't a question." Rose nodded, unable to lie. "I saw him about to ambush you. I couldn't just watch. I told you to stay inside." "Yes, you did." She lifted her chin. "And I chose not to. I saved your life." For a long moment Quinn stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, in 2 quick strides, he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "Damn it, Rose," he muttered against her hair. "You could have been killed." She clutched at his shirt, breathing in his scent: gunpowder, leather, and something uniquely him. "So could you?" He pulled back slightly, his hands framing her face. "When I saw Blackwell, all I could think was that he'd found you, that he'd come to collect what he thought was his." "I'm not his," Rose whispered. "I'm not anyone's property." "No," Quinn's thumbs brushed her cheeks. "You never were." Then he was kissing her, desperately, passionately, as if he'd been waiting forever to do so. Rose responded with equal fervor, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, drawing him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Rose. I have no right to, but I do." "You have every right," she replied softly. "Because I love you too." His smile, then rare, radiant, transforming his solemn face, was like the sun breaking through clouds. "What about Boston? Your fortune?" "Money doesn't make a home," Rose said. "People do. You do, Quinn." More townspeople were arriving, calling for the sheriff. Their moment of privacy was ending. Quinn straightened, his duty calling him back. "We'll talk later," he promised, touching her cheek one last time before turning to the door. Rose watched him go, her heart full to bursting. Whatever happened next, she knew her place was here in Sweetwater Creek, with the man who had bought her freedom and inadvertently captured her heart. The aftermath of the shootout kept Quinn busy well into the night. 2 townsmen had been wounded, one seriously. The surviving gang members were locked in cells. Statements were taken, telegrams sent to neighboring jurisdictions. Rose helped where she could, tending to minor injuries, providing coffee and food to the volunteers. Each time she caught Quinn's eye across the crowded room, the look they shared confirmed that everything had changed between them. It was nearly midnight when they finally returned home. Jasper, sensing the charged atmosphere, made a hasty excuse and retired upstairs, leaving them alone in the kitchen. "Vernon Blackwell recognized me," Rose said quietly, pouring Quinn a cup of coffee. "When they brought him past the doctor's office." Quinn's jaw tightened. "What did he say?" "Nothing, just looked surprised." She shivered slightly. If they'd succeeded in their plans. But they didn't. Quinn took her hands in his. "And Blackwell will hang for his crimes. He'll never threaten you again." Rose nodded, finding comfort in his solid presence. "What happens now with us?" Quinn brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "That depends on you. You're free, Rose, truly free. Your future is yours to decide." "I know what I want," she said simply. "I want to stay in Sweetwater Creek. I want to teach if the school will have me, and I want—" She hesitated, then forged ahead. "I want a life with you, Quinn." The vulnerable hope in his eyes made her heart ache. "You're sure? I'm just a sheriff with a modest house and dangerous job." "You're the man I love," Rose countered. "The most honorable, brave, decent man I've ever known. Your job is part of who you are, and I wouldn't change that." Quinn drew her into his arms, holding her as if she were infinitely precious. "I never thought I'd find love again after Catherine. Didn't think I deserved it." "We both deserve happiness," Rose whispered against his chest. "Don't we?" "Yes," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "We do." 2 days later, Quinn escorted Rose to the town council meeting, where she proposed using part of her inheritance to build a proper schoolhouse for Sweetwater Creek. The council enthusiastically approved her as the town's new teacher, with classes to begin as soon as the building was completed. As they walked home hand in hand, Rose felt a contentment she had never known before. "It feels right," she said, "using Father's money this way. He always valued education." "He'd be proud of you," Quinn replied, squeezing her hand. "I know I am." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson, Quinn turned to her with unusual nervousness. "I've been thinking," he began, "about what you said, about wanting a life together." Rose's heart quickened. "Yes, I'm not a man who believes in waiting once he's sure." Quinn took her hand, his eyes serious in the fading light. "I love you, Rose. I want to marry you if you'll have me." Joy bubbled up inside her, bright and effervescent. "Are you proposing, Sheriff Lawton?" A smile tugged at his lips. "I believe I am, Miss Northcott." "Then my answer is yes." She leaned forward, sealing her acceptance with a kiss. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church, with Jasper standing as best man and May Howard as Rose's attendant. The entire town turned out for the celebration. Even Vera Peterson, who had grudgingly revised her opinion of the former housekeeper when Rose donated generously to the church restoration fund. Only Margaret Thornton was conspicuously absent. Their wedding night was everything Rose had dreamed of: tender, passionate, a culmination of the love that had grown between them against all odds. In Quinn's arms, she found a home more secure than any she had known before. Autumn turned to winter, bringing snow to the mountains and cozy evenings by the fire. The new schoolhouse progressed rapidly. its construction providing welcome employment to many townsmen during the cold months. Rose divided her time between preparing lessons and creating a true home in Quinn's now their house. "I never thought these walls would hold so much happiness," Quinn confessed one night as they lay together in the darkness. "After Mother died, it was just a place to sleep." "It's more than that now," Rose murmured, curling against him. "It's the beginning of our family." Quinn's hand moved to rest over her stomach, where their first child had just begun to grow, a precious secret they had only recently confirmed. "A family," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Something I'd given up hoping for." "Never give up hope," Rose said, kissing him softly. "I didn't, even in my darkest hour." Spring brought the completion of the schoolhouse and the opening of classes. Rose taught 26 students ranging from 6 to 16, finding fulfillment in work she had been born to do. Her condition became increasingly obvious as summer approached, bringing delighted congratulations from the townspeople who had embraced her as their sheriff's wife. Quinn proved to be attentive during her pregnancy, ensuring she rested adequately despite her protests that pregnancy wasn't an illness. Jasper, who had remained a boarder in their home, became unofficially Uncle Jasper to the coming child, whittling toys in his spare time. In September, just as the aspens began turning gold on the mountainsides, Rose gave birth to a son they named Thomas Edward Lawton. Quinn, who had paced anxiously throughout her labor, held his son with trembling hands. "He's perfect," he whispered, tears in his eyes, "just like his mother." As Rose watched her husband cradle their child, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From desperate destitution to being sold like property, to finding love with the very man who had purchased her contract. Life had taken the most unexpected turns. "What are you thinking?" Quinn asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "About the day I arrived in Sweetwater Creek," she replied. "How terrified I was, how I thought my life was over." Quinn sat beside her on the bed, their son sleeping peacefully in his arms. Instead, it was just beginning. "For both of us," Rose agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "I wouldn't change any of it, not even the hardest parts. They led me to you." 2 years later, as Rose stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching Quinn teach little Thomas how to ride his first pony in the yard, she marveled at how completely happiness had transformed them both. Quinn smiled easily now, laughed often. The reserved sheriff had become an expressive husband and doting father. The school was thriving under her direction, with plans for a second classroom to accommodate the town's growth. Their second child, a daughter they'd named Catherine, slept in a cradle nearby. Her arrival 6 months earlier having completed their family circle. Jasper, recently married to the telegraph operator's sister, was building a home of his own at the edge of town, though he still joined them for Sunday dinners. The Blackwell gang was a distant memory, its remaining members serving long sentences in territorial prisons. As the afternoon sun gilded the scene before her, Rose felt a profound gratitude for the twisting path that had led her to this moment. From the desperate young woman sold to a sheriff, to the confident wife, mother, and teacher, she had become. Her journey had been unexpected but ultimately blessed. Quinn looked up, catching her eye across the yard. His smile, meant only for her, still had the power to make her heart skip. He said something to Thomas, then crossed to join her on the porch. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. Rose leaned into his strength, watching their son's determined efforts with the gentle pony. "Completely. No regrets about Boston, the life you could have had. None," she said with absolute certainty. "This is where I belong, with you, with our children. This is home." Quinn kissed her then, a kiss that held the promise of all their tomorrows. Rose smiled against his lips, remembering the desperate young woman who had once been sold to a sheriff, never dreaming that in losing her freedom, she would ultimately find it along with a love strong enough to last a lifetime.